Hey everyone, it's Bond here for Dr. Pennsylvania. Today we wanted to do something a little bit different. This is a piece that was written about 15 years ago for a literary magazine but never submitted. And since some of our more personal stories have been going over well lately on the feed, we figured we would go ahead and put this one out there since it was never actually submitted for publication like some of the other works were. And we wanted to do something a little different while we researched some upcoming episodes. To be clear, this story would fall under the category of creative nonfiction. Also, this story does have a little bit of a graphic element to it, but it shouldn't be anything that puts too many people off. Either way, we hope you like it, and as always, thanks for listening.
When I was a young kid, the world appeared old to me. Then as a teenager, the world began to change and became better lit and favored neutral colored drywall over paneling and cracking plaster. I was still young enough by 21 that everything I wrote was self-aggrandizing, but I was old enough to vote and buy beer and those cheap little cigars at the gas station. I was still a kid to anybody older than me, and this included most of my friends, a group I felt certain did not suffer the same social handicaps that I did. They were worldly and appeared to be comfortable and confident in their surroundings while I stood and tried to speak as little as I could and always failed at that. Each night, I would recollect all the terrible things I had said. And now I was old enough that it was seen as socially acceptable to have your new friend's parents invite you over for a barbecue. I think. I still find it weird that it was just his parents, himself, and another college freshman. The him in this case being Pete, except Pete is not Pete. It wasn't Pete then either, and I suppose I could have just changed his name to Pete. We haven't kept in touch, our friendship falling out in the natural way that they sometimes do, though Pete may just become bored with my friendship, and I really couldn't blame him, I suppose. Even the house that Pete's parents had bought isn't there anymore. It was raised a couple years ago to make way for improvements on Main Street in the small Pennsylvania college town Pete's parents had only moved to a couple months prior to this story taking place, this story that I am about to relate. But we're going to call him Pete because I don't want him to find out the terrible truth about his dog. So I was invited to a barbecue. I was invited and the food was free, so I showed up on time, and Pete's family had moved into the house a month or two before. I think I said that already, and I complimented his mother on how much I liked the house because I could tell it was built in the 1920s. How can you tell, she asked me, and I pointed to different architectural designs like the portal between the front door and the living room and the arch style of the time, and she became excited at me having an eye for such things. She gave me the full tour, including her bedroom, which may or may not be inappropriate. She was quick to point out the dark stained wood trim and not to the fact that the bathroom was carpeted, which is a mortal sin, in my estimation. Coming back downstairs, I heard a storm door in the back of the house slam. This was followed by a scraping sound as though a dog were walking across the linoleum kitchen floor. The sound changed to something that didn't sound unlike a dog walking on a living room carpet, and that's when, from the stair landing, I was introduced by Pete's mother to the dog. "Here's," she said, and there my memory trails off a little because the dog had my full attention. The dog was a small brown affair and was somewhere on my limited mental canine breed identification chart between a Dachshund and a Pinscher. It was longish, low, short caramel fur, a straight tail, and a mouthful of people teeth. I couldn't stop staring at its teeth, and the dog could not stop smiling at me with its human-sized molars making me dizzy. And for a brief second, the dog and I made full eye contact, and I could tell. I just somehow knew that this dog was onto me. It knew something about me that I did not, and it was going to use that for its gain. That's when Pete handed me a glass of something, water or lemonade, not alcohol. I was old enough to buy it for myself now, but not old enough that friends' parents would buy it for me anymore. I don't remember what it was, and I'm not sure if it registered at the time either, because the dog was still smiling at me with teeth like old refrigerators. Pete told me that there was a grill in the back, and that's where everyone else was. Someone had made pickles. I mean, not on the grill, but another student who was at the party had made pickles and brought them in a mason jar. He was far more awkward than I was, and I weighed the pros and cons of my sitting at a table with him. I was very thankful that there was someone clearly more awkward than I was. His pickles were small, briny, and had strange white bumps on them that I do not normally associate with pickles. Pete's dad made lamb kebabs. Dinner was probably nice. Pete's parents asked me a lot of questions, which made me feel like I was taking a survey, and I enjoy taking surveys. The other student, who we'll call Pickles, was apparently friends with Mom because the two of them were involved in a gardening co op which was overseen by the university, and that's where the pickles came from. Pickles, the student, had been discussing the importance of nitrate levels and different manures available at the co op while I was silently struggling to find a way to get a bit of lamb out of my mouth. No amount of chewing was able to break down enough that I could swallow it, and it was starting to look like I was chewing gum, and I thought to myself, I can't keep this up for much longer before it draws attention. I opted to stop chewing for a second so that anyone who was suspicious would assume I'd finally bested the bit of meat and swallowed the whole damn thing already. Then, after a sufficient period, I crept under the table to pretend to tie my shoe, which everyone else would have to presume had somehow come untied while we were sitting around dinner. The dog was there, under the table, and I figured I could pick the wad of half-chewed meat from my mouth and she'd be happy to take it from me. But she did not. She sat there, beside Dad's leg, looking at me. She gave a big, styrofoam smile when she saw the meat on the patio. She came up to it, licked it a little bit, then turned to walk away. I have often felt that I need to defend myself as a cat person. It's not that I don't like dogs or that I was disgusted by dogs before the day on Pete's patio. It's just a personality clash. You see, dogs are needy. They're like needy people. They need you. They need your attention. They need you to let them out. They're antithetical to cats. Cats don't often need you. And this fits my lifestyle and personality better. Cats, in my experience, are quieter than dogs, and I'm always trying to be quieter than I'm naturally inclined to be. I don't want to go around euthanizing dogs, but I'm not above eating them if they're cooked right. Dogs and I are friendly, but cohabitation would be impossible because we're just too different. And really, I can't blame a dog for being unable to forgive the previous sentence. The dog had people teeth, but as it turned around, I also saw that this tiny dog had very large and pronounced lady parts. And the dog turned to stare at me, taunting me with its gigantic toothy smile, realizing that I had noticed what was going on. It was like everything on this dog was impossibly large, and I gracefully bumped my head on the bottom of the table, spilling my drink on the ground, and it just got weird, and I choose not to remember too much of the party after that. But it must not have gone over badly because a couple of months later, I was invited back. My girlfriend, now wife at the time, came with me. And I had somehow not mentioned anything about the dog to her. Now she likes dogs, or at least she thinks she likes dogs. She likes the idea of dogs. And as we walked into the house, I whispered in her ear, "Look at its lady parts." And the dog continued to taunt me every time I would be there. Somehow, it was always in my direct line of sight, rear facing me, and it would know, and it would taunt me as it would turn its head back and stare at me with its improbable tombstone people teeth, whiter than any white capped tooth on some starlet on the television I had ever seen. This is the story of people teeth. Or rather, that's where the story of people teeth ends, because after that second party, I never went back. It wasn't that there was anything wrong. I still liked Pete, but Pete went down to Pittsburgh for college and didn't come back up to the small town we were in all that often. And then I moved out and I moved down to Pittsburgh as well. And I didn't come back up north for a few months. And the strangest thing was when I did, maybe 6 to 7 months later, the house was no longer there. I had already lost all sort of contact with Pete. Even mutual friends didn't know what happened to Pete. And I repeat, the house was gone. It was almost like any sort of tangible connection to this bizarre, uncomfortable events in my life, that weird place where you're no longer a kid and you're not old enough to be old by anyone's eyes. It was just all gone. It was almost as though I had wished it out of being, except for my incredibly awkward comment to my now wife at the time to look at this dog's anatomy. In a way, it's the best possible thing that could happen. And honestly, if we all look at our lives, I'm sure there's an awkward moment that we could just wish away. I hope Pete's doing well. I'm sure he's still out there. I hope his parents are doing well too. I hope that whatever eminent domain bought the house so it could be raised to make improvements on Main Street was enough to enable them to buy an even nicer house. I don't have any really good way of wrapping this up. The honest to gosh truth is that the actual manuscript that I had written all those years ago is, it was finished like some 5 minutes back in my reading. So I'll conclude by stating once more, I cannot fully express, I cannot make you appreciate just how much it looked like this dog had stolen somebody's dentures. They were impossibly white, impossibly large, impossibly humanoid looking teeth in the mouth of a tiny, tiny dog, and far beyond the fact that this dog wielded its sexuality in front of me in a way that I was deeply uncomfortable with. I was much more profoundly disturbed by its mouthful of people teeth.